Okay, everybody, we're back with a great podcast. I'm sure everyone's just so thrilled that we're back. They're very excited. I'm here with my partner in crime, my partner in podcasting. That's Dakota. Dakota, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, brother, man. I'm guessing like a lot of people here, boxing was a little inaccessible to me this week, but I'm doing good, brother.
Talk us through that.
Well, listen, bro. I mean, unless you're very invested in like the lineage of British boxing, which I'm not saying people don't have the right to be, but Eubank, if you're not, then Eubank and Benn was not particularly interesting. Certainly not interesting enough for a $60 pay-per-view on top of your $30 DAZN subscription, which now has a new tier to it as well. And I mean, me personally, it was just my schedule, but I think that Top Rank not having a major streaming platform is a problem. And I'm glad that they found these, these free live TV apps to be able to get themselves out there. It feels like they might be better off just doing it on YouTube, which is a little more recognized. But the fighters that are on those cards are all really talented, world-class guys that I think deserve a bigger platform. I think, boxing, when you have Inoue on the Top Rank Facebook page, it's a little backwards.
So many opinions. For me, I knew of the Eubank Nigel Benn story, but it didn't hit the same way, right? My very rudimentary was Chris Eubank was a flashy, wore fancy suits, talked in a very fancy way, a showy guy. He came out to Tina Turner, the Tina Turner song, whatever. And then like Nigel Benn was like the tough guy, the opposite of it. He was the rough guy who would never be seen in a suit. And I think that what captured people's attention wasn't just the fights, it was the contrast of personalities. Not saying it's the same, but it was kind of the magic that made Teofimo Lopez and Vasil Lomachenko special, where they were spiritual opposites, and it kind of made for a great rivalry. I think that's
Morales.
Exactly, the spiritual opposites, and I think that's a big thing with these. So I always knew of the fights. I always had seen the fights, but they didn't really do everything for me, right? Because I'm not British, and the impact just didn't have. It's like it impacted me in America because they were such monumental moments, but it also didn't impact me to a certain extent because I wasn't in Britain. And shout out to everybody tuning in just to hear our thoughts right now. Huge, huge audience right now by our standards. But then we get into an interesting conversation where the sons of these fighters, they had such a great legacy. People want to see the fight between the sons. And the first fight, as you said, had no business being as good as it was. Second fight kind of was the fight I thought the first fight would be.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a little bit sleepier from what I saw in the highlights. It looked like when Eubank tried to pull the trigger, it just wasn't there. The reaction time wasn't there. The snap wasn't there. He physically looked drawn out. I mean, it's cool to be ripped and buff and whatever, but he looked like a guy who was really sucked in, and it just wasn't the best version of him. And Ben looked super motivated, and kudos to him for turning the tables.
So to me, I think you hit on something. The weight impacted Eubank. Also think that winning the first fight kind of had a negative reaction to him where there was less urgency. He had won in the series, and I did feel like a little bit where it's like, okay, I've gotten kind of what I need from this series along with the weight. And with Ben, it's like, I don't know, like the issue I have with this series is I don't see either of these guys as top 10 fighters in any division. So it's like, I almost, and I said this immediately after on my blog, I'd almost rather them fight 6 times in a row because it makes more sense for them to have 6 fights every now and then they're good and whatever. Because you put Conor Benn in with Arnold Barbosa, I think Barbosa beats him. You put him in with Virgil Ortiz, he beats him. I don't really see these guys having a traditional boxing.
Yeah, but I don't know that matters, Lukey, because the British fight fans are a little self-absorbed, right? They're really into their own guys. I'm not saying that in a bad way. They're into their guys, and they have a localized boxing culture that isn't necessarily as connected to the game as a whole. They support local boxing. But I think in being so into themselves and absorbed in their own scene, they also at times I think can inflate the significance of something that's significant to them in terms of how important it is to everybody else. You get what I'm saying?
I get it. And I also just feel like this wasn't true. Like this felt like a really neat event, and it felt like historically important because of the dads. It was hard for me to look at this as like world championship boxing. This was its own thing. Like the styles, even the weight classes, tons of new viewers. Jump in, leave comments. We'd love to hear it. Maybe we should do all
also
of it.
kind of showing, a lot of how boxing is right now. There were guys on this undercard that were legitimately top 10 guys. Like, Catterall is a legitimate top 10 guy. I think it's fair to say that, Riakporhe was top 10 at cruiserweight, now up at heavyweight. Like, there was world-class guys on the card.
And we'll get into those. What do we talk about with this, Ben? Because to me, it's like Ben wins. He gets 2 knockdowns in the final round. Eubank has been like this his whole career. He's super inconsistent. He has a good performance and then loses a fight and then he wins. He's just never really been a guy who's been able to keep momentum. Conor Benn felt like he'd be the next big British boxing star, but then he's had a lot of delays, and now he has this win, but it kind of also feels like he's fighting well above a weight that he's best at. And if
Eubank is fighting well below a weight that he's best at, and I think they probably won't fight at a different weight. But if I had to be honest, I think they will just fight again.
I mean, that's what I think. They should just keep fighting over and over. Shout out to the chat. Damien said, hi, Damien. How you doing? Johnny Quest, big fan of his TV show. I'm glad that he's gotten older and now he watches us on here. I actually grew up watching Johnny Quest, so that's very humbling that Johnny Quest is tuning in. Ben versus Patty Donovan for the IBF at welterweight. Well, there's some moving things. So, and then he says Lewis Crocker versus Ben. I mean,
I think it's also a matter of, are they going to now resume normal boxing careers with championship aspirations, or are they going to continue to take kind of these customized fights for the British audience specifically?
Well, and I know you're not as high as I am on Crocker, but Crocker has a big win over Patty Donovan. Maybe I rate him higher than you do, but I think that puts him pretty high in the division. To me, and we'll get into this pretty shortly, I think Jack Catterall is the second best guy in the division after his performance, based off of a little bit of eye test, overreaction, etc. But I don't think you can look at what Louis Crocker did to Patty Donovan and made an adjustment and say, okay, Conor Benn's going in there and just steamrolling him. Like, Crocker's shown that he can come forward and he can implement a game plan.
Is that a weight that Conor can even make? Like, I think that's a legitimate question, is can he, now having fought 2 fights at 157, cut 10 pounds and still deliver?
And to me, it's like,
I don't think he can.
If Chris Eubank goes back to 68 or 75, whatever weight he wants to fight at, are there diminished values from this performance? Does that does this weigh on him? And Conor Benn, if he goes down in weight, does he have the Roy Jones effect where he comes back from being, to me, it just feels like they have to just kind of exist in this world where they fight each other and then characters emerge to fight in this world. Like, they're no longer on a championship belt trajectory anymore. That's just the way I look at it.
They have to decide if that's something they want to do when they're done with each other, or if this is what they do.
To me, I feel like we're going to get 3 or 4 fights. That's the way it feels. I feel like Eubank is going to be done when these fights are over.
He looked cooked, bro. He looked cooked.
To me, it was up there when Adam Kawanaki got stopped by Robert Helenius and then never won a fight again. Like, it really looked like that type of done.
Well, who knows what kind of, both those guys took a lot of damage in that first fight, bro. And who's to say that a 35, 36-year-old guy, on top of fighting at a weight that's entirely unnatural to him, just can't deliver after something like that,
Yeah, now they're 1-1. They'll probably do it again at some point. Who knows when? but it also, like, I have a love-hate relationship with this series. I love that it generates boxing people to tune in. I love that, and now we'll transition. My guy Jack Catterall gets a huge win over Echo Asuman, who I love, big working class fighter, displays power, working with Bozy Innes, a little bit more reckless, but displays power, gets an 11th round stoppage. I love that Catterall gets a big stage to fight on because he's a guy that could very easily be fighting at small convention centers. And this was great. What is your assessment of Jack Catterall?
I mean, it's great to see him be a little bit more aggressive, right? But still stay within himself and within his skill set. I think that's kind of like we were talking about this, right? Like, what does a guy like him, who's such a back foot counterpunching guy, what does he get out of working with Bozy Innes, where that's not the thing in Philly, really, like at all? And clearly, he has found a way to successfully integrate some more aggressive tactics into his his more defense first style. And I think that can make him even more dangerous. I've always thought Catterall was a hell of a fighter, man. I've always just thought his poise, his understanding of who he is, his understanding of range and abilities to make guys miss. I just thought, this is a guy who's going to be a tough out for anybody. And particularly with welterweight being pretty shallow and him now adding some layers to his game up at a new weight. Like, I think he could be a guy at this weight.
So here's the thing. I think he's the second best guy in the division behind Norman currently. What do you think?
It's too tough to know because we're going to find out a lot about both Norman and Haney after this fight next weekend. I think that
Wait, you're going another way. So you're saying he might be the best guy.
It's right. It's a little bit tough to know. And I also think, again, for me, he has Asuman is the closest thing to a top guy that he's taken at the weight.
He was a top guy. Like, we can't diminish him. Like, he was a top guy.
Sure, but I mean, maybe he was like top 12, right? So he's in the top of the division, but he's not. That's like his best win is Josh Taylor when Josh was pretty much done.
I mean, if we read through this list, it's like Lewis Crocker, Rolando Romero, who won his belt by beating Ryan Garcia, Mario Barrios, Manny Pacquiao, Patty Donovan,
Stanionis,
Rohan Polanco, Tiger Johnson. That's about the top 10. Brian Norman.
Yeah.
I mean, he has to be in that top 5, right? If you're just talking talent.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's just, to me, it's exciting because Catterall to me looks like a champion without a belt is what he looks like.
He also, again, he looks like another guy who moved up a little bit in weight and just is a little bit more explosive. That's never going to blow my mind because I wish more fighters would do that, but it just looks like all of the circumstances of how he's going about his business now are benefiting him. And I think the experiences he had down at 140 make him a well-rounded and experienced guy, much more so, I would say, than most people at the division.
Johnny Quest, was good to see Catterall let his hands go a bit more.
Yep.
Jesus M, saludos. You're going to get some comments coming in from our guy, Jesus M. We love Jesus M.
Fake Nello, baby.
Jesus M, we're going to get to that. Oh, God, I can't. Can you pronounce this guy's name? I don't want to mispronounce
I'm going to go Saeed Touré.
Okay. No trilogy needed at all in reference to the Conor Benn, Chris Eubank Jr. Ben is going back to 147. Can he beat someone in the top 10? I mean, we read it, and it's not the strongest top 10, so I'm sure if he fought everybody, he could get a win. But if you asked me who that guy would be, I don't know.
Yeah, I think his best shot might be, I mean, honestly, it's probably against the other Brits other than Catterall. Like, it's probably Crocker or Donovan that he would have the best chance against. I honestly would favor both of those guys over him at this point, but I think that's who he'd have the best shot at. Barrios also, obviously, like, everybody kind of wants to look at him right now. I think he's perceived as the most vulnerable titleist, but he also has substantially more experience then Conor Benn, and I would definitely favor Mario in that fight as well.
Also beat up Ugas, which is no easy thing. I think also
It's a serious win.
Is a top 10 fighter in that division, and he's older, so that's a
Pacquiao's just a freak, though. Like I'm willing to kind of just give it up to Manny a little bit. And as much as Mario with the draw with Ramos and the draw with Pacquiao are his back-to-back performances, like who's taking the tough fights at welterweight more than Mario? You know, and you're not going to win them all. Abel showed up and fought a hell of a fight, and Manny Pacquiao is just kind of a specimen.
No, I hear you, bro. Oh man, chat jumping. We got Mighty Brooke. She's got a fight coming up. She said, "What's up, fellas? Hope you guys are doing great. We got to get Mighty Brooke back on the show.
Hell yeah,
because she's got her fight coming up, and
looking forward to seeing
it. It's a rematch. I think when we do our end of the year show, I think she had the fight of the month for my newsletter. I'll go through all the months, and in January, her and Gloria Mungila, who she's rematching, was the fight of the month to me. Look at how popping this show is today. Another fight I want. Who would have thought? Big names bringing in big viewership. Who would have thought?
But that's how disconnected we are to the significance of that shit in England, bro. Because I'm not even thinking they're big names like that. You know what I mean?
Meanwhile, they're tuning into our show, listening to our very average opinions, loving it.
I'll take it, bro. I will take it. And we love the British fans too. I speak on that insular nature only because, you know, at times, and you hear it in the commentary, it's tough for them to get out of their own way and really commentate a fight because they're so about themselves and each other that you see it when you got a Brit and a non-Brit, and you get the all British commentary. They're talking about their guy like he's a killer. He's the best thing since sliced bread. If the fight's not going his way, he's having an off night, and they can't help themselves, Lukey. But we love them.
Yeah, we got to get Brooke back on the show because even the chat is supporting Brooke. So we got to get Brooke on the show and have her do like a little segment. We'll do that. We'll figure that out. So Brooke, just hit me up and
let's do it before a fight.
Yeah, because our community supports Brooke. I'm not ignoring Jesus M, or I just want the truth in the chat. My name is pronounced Dakota Say It.
Oh, hold on. You got to put the comment up. I don't know who you're talking about. Saeed. Yeah, I think I nailed it, right? Saeed.
Yeah, he said so. We want to do that, but I'm not ignoring.
Thank you for watching, Saeed. We appreciate you, brother.
We're not ignoring Jesus M, or I just want the truth. I just want to wrap up this British show. And there were two other performances. Adam Azim really, really looks like a special fighter. He has glaring flaws at times, but
he's gonna get knocked out, right? But he is special.
Like sure. I'm starting to wonder, does he have that special thing where it's gonna take a while and he's gonna dominate? Like, because Kurt Scobie offered some of those traits where you might think, okay, this guy's gonna really give issues. And he blinding hand speed really put it on Kurt. So I thought that was good. And a fighter that I'm not sure you're a big fan of, Ishmael Davis, has become a guy that I'm a huge fan of in British boxing. All he does is show up, huge back, put pressure, exciting fighting style. And he had a fight with Sam Gilley, who reminds me of a skateboarder who I used to watch in videos named Ben Gilley, who just charged down rails and was just crazy. And they had a fight that was way too much fun. So I just wanted to give my guy Ishmael Davis credit because I thought that he won his last fight. I can't remember who he fought. He probably returned before the guy that he fought to the ring and wins a fight of consequence. He's just
that's where I got to give the Brits credit, man, is they're not afraid to match up regionally, with the best of their area. And so the best of the UK, by the time they come out of that scene, they've already been battle tested. I would say a lot of times more sometimes than our guys.
Any thoughts on Azim?
I really like what I've seen. Again, I apologize to everybody watching, but I could not buy this pay-per-view. It just wasn't worth it to me.
Times are hard, bro. Times are hard. The Lukey boxing budget is not strong enough to get this one.
So from what I've seen
for
of
the
Azim,
record, we don't bootleg, so we watch the highlights because we don't do the streaming. If we can't, we support the sport, right? So we watch highlight videos if we can't watch it,
Yeah, and I think I think it's also important, to some extent to just be honest about it, because I know that we're not the only people that's the case for, right? There's normal people everywhere that would have liked to have watched that fight, that probably would have put it on, even if casually, had there not been a second paywall in front of it. But boxing is very much inaccessible a lot of times.
Azim and Ishmael Davis, thoughts?
Let me speak to Azim, and just from what I saw of this fight and what I've seen from him in the 5 or 6 other fights of his that I've seen, he's offensively very talented. He's very similar to Amir Khan, but I actually think he's a little tighter in the pocket. He knows not to throw 8 punches in a combination. He's got a little bit more of a high guard, but man, he's still got that fucking chin right up in the air, bro. Like he's gonna get caught on the way out. He got caught on the way out in this fight multiple times, and Kurt's a hell of a fighter, but he wasn't going to put Azim out, I don't think. And like, as much as I think it's going to take somebody, very special to do that, he's in a division where, if you get hit on the way out, even by like a Subriel Matias, bro, you're not making it. So I think that he's extremely talented, but there will be certain ceilings for him, I think.
So, one other fighter, Richard Riakporhe, he fought a guy named Tommy Walsh who came out in
I
like
like Riakporhe, bro. I like him.
Well, do you want to do any? I was going to do the heavy lifting here, but did you want to say anything before I do heavy lifting?
Before you do the heavy lifting, I just think he looks like a guy who's filled out to heavyweight really well. It fits his frame, and I think that he's another interesting guy to kind of throw in the mix. Maybe that's a good Moses Itauma or Richard Torres opponent. I think he's a guy to throw in the mix for sure. I like those fights too. I just want the truth. Riakporhe and Akoli. And like I said, at Itauma, I think those are great fights.
So to me in this fight, Tommy Walsh was like this guy who, looking at his box rec, he hadn't really taken on the elite competition, but he talked a good game. And this was just one-sided. This was just a levels fight. This was a guy who, I read things where people compared Walsh to Tommy Morrison. And it's like people throw around liberally these comparisons. Like Tommy Morrison is like what Fabio Wardley does to guys, where it's like all of a sudden you're getting blitzed. Like Richard Torres is what Tommy Morrison did. Like Tommy Morrison was an extremely special fighter when he blitzed. To me, Walsh just looked like a guy who had some power and fought guys that weren't as talented as him. And when he was doing it with Riakporhe, he didn't know what to do with a guy that was basically his equal. And he got laid out in 2 rounds. And to me, it was a great audition for a really, really big fight in the future for Riakporhe. I felt like it put him on the stage to be in the conversation for those type of fights.
Yeah, I hope so. I was really enjoyed watching him down at cruiserweight as well. I thought that if anybody from, that class of cruiserweights was going to get up to Opataya or to Ramirez, I thought he might be one of the guys, but I think that looks perfectly suited to heavyweight.
And one other thought, Oscar Duarte would test that chin of Adam Azim. Said, I just want the truth.
You're not wrong, because he has a little bit more head movement than Scobie. And I think is much more front foot and active in terms of cutting off the ring. He's not gonna give Adam, that might be exactly the type of style that bothers him. But I could also see Adam just being more talented than Duarte and getting caught now and then and it not being enough. So I think we're still figuring out how far up he can go with being offensively gifted while being sort of having defensive liabilities that I don't think he's going to fix.
So now we're going to shift over to the top rank card. Rafael Espinoza stops Arnold Kahegi. It's a fine enough fight. I believe it was his 4th title defense. Espinoza, a top guy now. All full disclosure, you haven't seen the card probably outside of highlights, but do you see him as a top guy in the sport? Is he the new Emmanuel Navarrete at this point?
I think that he is. I think it's unfortunate that Espinoza has not gotten the same exposure that Navarrete has gotten, and I think again, I hate harping on it, but the fact that his promoter is not does not have a major streaming outlet, and they did not capitalize particularly well on his 2 wins over Robeisy Ramirez. I just don't know that he's getting the credit or the acknowledgement that he deserves, but I think that he's a very exciting champion.
Where do you rate him?
At featherweight, I think it's tough to not have him as 1 or 2. I think Angelo Leo would certainly have an argument to being number 1 as well, but I think that Espinoza is one of, if not the guy right now, honestly.
Okay, then on the undercard, Lindolfo Delgado had a barn burn with Gabriel Valenzuela. I caught bits of it. Full transparency, I didn't see the full fight. A lot of people felt as though Lindolfo Delgado didn't win the fight. Jesus M said Delgado disappointed performance. To me, from what I saw, is it might be worth debating if Delgado should move up in weight.
Because I think it also might be worth debating if he's lost 2 fights in a row, because I think it's possible he has.
I mean, and how much of that is maybe weight, and how much of that weighs on a fighter, right? Where now you're like in the title hunt. I believe he's a number 1 contender, and yet you've had 2 kind of iffy performances that are frustrating. Like, how does that weigh on a guy?
I'm sure it has to weigh on him to some extent because he's right at the pinnacle, but he is also fighting top level competition. And there is something about his style. There's guys that get, Teofimo has that, right? I think Teofimo Lopez probably has 5 losses on his record, but he has a way of getting these kinds of decisions where it looks like he's lost a 60-40 fight, but the judges are convinced.
Another opinion. Top rank. I just want the truth. Top Rank's got to make John Arobio, who looked up like $1 million on Thursday night on the Eye of the Tiger card, facing the Wasp, Ndinjangi. He stopped him in, I believe, 3 rounds, 2 rounds, somewhere around there. They want to see Emiliano Vargas versus John Arobio. What are your thoughts on that type of fight? Emiliano Vargas went 10 rounds with a durable opponent, Montrell, guy that Tiger Johnson had gone to a unanimous decision with. Very durable guy. But to me, I see Emiliano as a very talented up-and-comer, but I see him still as a prospect, even as a 10-round fighter. He hasn't really taken that 50-50 adversity fight yet. So it's really hard for me to rate him like other prospects because he's not really kind of,
he's developing and advancing as a fighter, but the competition isn't necessarily going up with that improvement.
Just feels like he's with a lot of prospects. You see, favorable matchmaking. It just feels like we haven't seen him had to face many adversities. And when he does face adversities, maybe in this fight, there wasn't really an adjustment. So it's kind of hard for me to rate him as a fighter right now.
Yeah. I think an Arobio fighting another kind of like younger, more in their prime guy who has aspirations himself. I think that, it may be time for those kinds of opponents.
I just want the truth. He got dropped in the 12th, I believe, talking of Lindolfo Delgado.
Yep.
He's now Hitchens mandatory, I believe, which is a rough fight because,
Bro, he's not winning a round of that fight.
That's a rough one, right? Because Hitchens is a distance operator. He is going to really make that hard. The opponent was catching Vargas with that left hook. I believe he's saying he be loading up too much in reference to Vargas, which
does a little bit.
It's kind of like he's going for the flashy knockouts and he's not setting things up as much. He's kind of like a 1-speed fighter currently. It's kind of my problem.
It's not enough finesse, but the finesse kind of comes with having somebody that can take that first wave of, the power and the intensity and the pace, he'll get in with a guy that's not impressive to him, I
don't know. It's weird. With him is a weird one, right? Because Moreno Fenduro had a pretty average performance this weekend, but I'm still very high on him. He fought William Langston. It's a real close fight. And yet Vargas is doing everything you ask of a young fighter, but for some reason, I keep wanting to see more and more. And I can't quite figure out why some up and comers I can just kind of see something and be like, okay, I get it. Is it being a second generation fighter? Is there something to that? Like, what is it that maybe I'm holding Emiliano to a higher standard where like I'm asking maybe too much of him? Is something I grapple with because for some reason I like him as a fighter, but he doesn't jump out the way some
I think
other.
it's similar to how I feel about Richard Torres. I think
I think
Richard's
it's exactly
fantastic.
the same.
Yeah, I think Richard's fantastic, but for the fights he's taking outside of the Guido fight are not fights where I could prove to you that he's a great fighter.
And that's a great segue. Richard had another fight where he's in with a guy and he stops him and he looked great, but it
Glad
just
he's
didn't.
active. I'm glad he's active.
But it just doesn't seem helpful. It just doesn't
It's not.
seem helpful.
Yeah, it's not. And I don't understand. I don't understand Richard's career, and I'm done trying to. I think he's a great guy, and I think that unfortunately he just hasn't had the opportunity consistently to take on the type of competition that it would take.
Fenduro's got to fight like Billy and let his hands go. He's too small to be looking for one punch. I'm sure Dakota has strong opinions on that.
Fendero. Who is Fendero?
You don't even know, bro. You got to
I
wait a
don't.
couple years. This is a deep dive. This Eye of the Tiger management. He's a good up and comer.
Well, I tried to watch again when they were on ESPN. I was watching all the Eye of the Tiger shows.
Let's jump over to the big fight card of the week. Really exciting one. Main event, David Benavidez versus Anthony Yarde. What are your thoughts, Dakota?
Shout out to Anthony Yarde for taking the fight. You can never, say the man didn't go out of his way to take hard fights and that he wasn't a hell of a fighter. I think Yarde's fantastic, but I think Benavidez is a pound for pound type of guy. I think he's very special, and I think that he dominates this fight, honestly. I rewatched the fight between him and Morrell recently, just in watching back some of the fights that I, noted might be a fight of the year type. And honestly, like, we'll get into this in a couple months, but I was watching and I was like, this might be it for me, man. This really might be the one. And I didn't think I was going to feel that way. There was other fights that you might give that attention to more, but I mean, Morrell was tremendous in that fight as well. And I don't think that Yarde is quite at the level of a David Morrell. And he's not going to have the tools to keep Benavidez off of him at all, I don't think.
Well, I think the best Yarde fought Beterbiev. And his best approach was to kind of like move and be reactionary. And I feel like against Benavidez, if you move and are reactionary, that's just going to be terrible. Because a lot of what Benavidez does is he's coming forward and he's putting a lot of pressure on you. And if you're just moving, you're letting him do his thing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a firm believer it's hard to outbox Virgil Ortiz. It's hard to outbox David Benavidez. Like, when these guys get into doing what they do and they're like Hall of Fame level fighters, it's hard to beat a Hall of Fame fighter if you don't seem to pass the eye test as a Hall of Fame fighter initially.
And I just don't know that he's got the style. He's never had the volume. He's been stopped by other big punchers. I don't think he's necessarily chinny, but when he goes up to a certain level, he competes, but he doesn't win. And I think that this is another instance of that. But that doesn't mean that Anthony Yarde's not a hell of a fighter. Just to me, David Benavidez is like 7 or 8 pound for pound. I want him see him in with the Bevols and the Beterbievs of the division. And anything outside of that, I guess, is not that exciting to me.
I think there's another way to look at this too. It speaks to the greatness of David Benavidez. He's kind of almost like a Paul Williams or a Gennady Golovkin, where they're so interesting as fighters, they main event, but they're so avoided. Whoever signs up to fight him isn't always the big name. Like David Benavidez is a main event boxer, but it's hard to get.
You also can't deny the guy's run he's been on the last couple times. He didn't wait around for Canelo, and now it's been Caleb, Boo Boo Andrade, Vazdik.
He takes as good of guys as he can get, but it's very clear he's been ducked.
For sure.
Like
he's been ducked, yeah.
And I also think that like when guys possibly fight him, Like, I think Morrell went, but like, look, Caleb's my guy, but Caleb fought him coming off a Canelo loss. I don't think that, like, if you couldn't get a Canelo fight, you'd take the Benavidez fight. Like, Benavidez has had the misfortune where outside of Morrell, he's never gotten a guy that's like a big name. People lose a fight and then they're like, okay, I'll take a bet. Well, Boo Boo had to move up weight. I mean, it's a good win, but it's like you got a guy that was avoided for 10 years at junior, middle, and middle, moving up. And it's like basically it's like the Spider-Man meme. That's who Benavidez fights. It's like Morrell is avoided. Boo Boo's avoided. Gvozdyk is avoided. It's like the only guys he fights are the guys that can't get fights, basically. You know, Plant is a warrior. He has a warrior spirit. He's willing to do it, and he came off the Canelo fight, and he was able to take that fight. But I do feel like Benavidez is one of the most, historically in modern boxing, one of the most avoided boxers.
For sure. And I think avoided in terms of the money fighters of his time and era, obviously notably Canelo, are not interested in fighting him. There are other elite guys that are interested in fighting him, and he has no problem fighting them. And so I think he's developing a volume of high-level fights that's extremely impressive, that even like a Triple G couldn't get those kind of fights in his prime. He wasn't getting the Caleb Plants and the Boo Boo Andrades of his era. He had to settle for Curtis Stevens and Gabe Rosado. So I do think that there's a level of fight that he's been able to find himself in consistently in recent years that does make him a star.
Would you say that Paul Williams, Golovkin, or David, who's the most ducked?
The most ducked? I would have to go Golovkin, honestly. It just, his prime was so void of genuine big fights.
And then Benavidez too?
Yeah, probably.
And then Paul Williams, because Paul Williams at 147
Paul fought a ton of big names.
But he had to go up to 60.
Yeah, he fought Margarito. He fought Martinez twice.
But he never got
down to junior middle.
It's like him. I think Paul and Winky Wright are two guys where they fought names, but they never got the big names. Like there were big names around, and magically those really big names never fought either of those two. They always fought like the equal boogeymen. You know what I mean? Yep. They never could get, like, those guys could never land a Manny Pacquiao fight, you know, or a Floyd Mayweather fight. I mean, or like a De La Hoya fight, you know, like these were guys that, you know. So, okay, that's that one. Let's go into probably the consensus a lot of internet people are excited about. Oh, my goodness. We're going to get into it. Devin Haney, Brian Norman. What are your thoughts, Dakota?
You know, my thoughts are that I just don't really know what Devin Haney brings to the table anymore. And I feel like, especially after the Sasaki fight, I feel like I know exactly what Brian Norman brings to the table. He's grown immensely since the fight with Quentin Randall. I think he's accurate. I think he's sharp. I think he's become more dynamic, and he's clearly a lights out power puncher. And Devin's gonna have to be really fucking special to beat him. And I don't know. You know, I haven't seen the Devin Haney that I think could win this fight since Regis Prograis.
Incognito, have I missed the Eubank Ben portion of the podcast? You have. So just all you got to do is you just start the show over. And if you don't care about tuning in or having questions or throw a question to us, we've already done that segment, but you can listen, and then probably the show will be over when you're to this point. But please check that out, especially if you're a first-time listener, subscribe. Or
appreciate you joining us.
I think most smart and reasonable people have the same opinions of this fight. Either Devin is going to outmaneuver. He's just going to be too quick, too fast. He's like basically an NFL level cornerback in terms of his athleticism, his speed. There is a chance that he just outmaneuvers Norman, or people think Norman's going to hit him and it's just going to be a game-changing flashback to the Garcia fight. And I think the people that put stock into that go, how many guys has Haney fought that are about the same size as him?
And Brian Norman is so much more reliable than Ryan, bro.
So I think that's where people look. But then I will also say, just a couple of years ago, you and me were not high on Norman. And what were we saying? He doesn't know his distance at times. And what is the one thing that Devin knows really well? Distance. So that's the one thing that makes this a fight to me, is kind of the two fighters' kryptonites. It's like their weaknesses are what the other one does well. And I'm curious who can exploit it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying about Devin with his range, but it just seems like to me that Brian's going to be more physical. Again, he's more the same size as Devin. And so it's hard for me to imagine a world where he's able to successfully keep Norman off the end of a jab and not really take any big shots. I don't think that's how the fight goes.
So I take it you think Norman's winning?
I do. I think it's a very possible chance that he knocks him out. I mean, I feel like for me, at least, it all kind of fell apart against Ryan, and there wasn't anything about that fight with Ramirez that made me feel like there had been some sort of like growth or healing or, lessons from that fight. Not to say that there hasn't been any, and I gotta respect the balls on Devin for taking this fight, so all respect to him for that, but I definitely think Norman will win.
Yeah, I can't call it. I see it going one of two ways. I see Haney turning back the clock and being a tough target to hit, and Norman loading up and missing, or I see Norman just being too physical. And I feel like we're gonna know within 2 or 3 rounds.
I truly would have leaned Haney until the last the Santillan and the Sasaki fights, because it's the accuracy for me, bro. He's much more accurate than he was when he was younger. And now at 23, 24, I think he's only going to get better.
I do think that people are underrating Devin coming into this because he has a strong internet personality. He's very much a modern person, like social media.
Do you actually think he can walk that tightrope for 12 rounds?
I think he could, but I've also seen him in the gym, and I know what he's capable of. The thing about this fight is, for Devin, he's going to get hit, and he has to embrace the fact that when you get hit, it might get weird. And if he can handle that, he has a really good chance of winning. But the fight really.
But do you think that Norman doesn't hit as hard as Ryan? Because I think he hits harder.
I think he hits harder, but I also think there's levels to the way you get hit, right? And Ryan, part of what Ryan does is I also think Ryan might have Devin's number or a bit of Devin's number. It's like Rolly has Ryan's number. He just knows how to fight him and beat him. I think Ryan might have a bit of Devin's number because he has the hand speed. And it looks like Devin doesn't like fighting guys that want to punch with him when he jabs. Like, that's not something he loves. The big thing in this fight is Norman's got to punch with him. If Norman lets Haney punch and doesn't get off and he's just trying to pressure him, Haney can pick up round after round.
Sure.
It's a big one. So I think that's a really interesting fight.
I do too, and it's certainly the most interesting fight on the welterweight schedule by far.
Dakota's main event: Bam Rodriguez, Puma Martinez. Two really cool nicknames. What do you think about this one?
Man, to be honest, without knowing and with it being, on the undercard of two fights that I would say are less significant, it's the main event for me. It has pound for pound implications, I would say, for both. It feels like Martinez is probably right on the outside looking in of the pound for pound conversation with the 2 wins over Ioka, and beating Bam would put him right in the mix. And for Bam, I think this is a tough fight for him because outside of Sonny Edwards, a lot of his biggest wins are against legendary but aging champions. And here he has another guy in his prime with a lot of momentum on his side to really make it, I would say, the closest thing to a 50-50 fight that he's been in. And I just think it's tremendous, bro.
Give me your keys to victory.
I mean, my whole thing is for Martinez, Bam has a way of asserting his identity and his pace onto every fight. And Ioka is a little bit more patient than Bam. He's not quite as like overtly as aggressive, and so it was a little easier, I think, for him to do that with Ioka because he wasn't being pressed in the same way. But if he can just find a way to not let Bam control every aspect of the pace, I think that's his best bet. How he does that, I'm not really sure. Bam's so complete, but I do think that Martinez himself is a pretty complete fighter who is consistently, out and overperformed people's expectations of him.
Well, I think Puma, the big thing with him is he stays in your chest and he works. He's a physical volume guy. I want to see how he handles Bam's angles and turning guys and punching to the body.
Correct me if I'm wrong though. What does against and Cajas, one of those, he was a little bit more technical, I remember.
Yeah, he did. He has the ability to do both, but I kind of think the best version of him is using his distance, but really pressing and punching, kind of overwhelming guys. I'm curious to see how he deals with the angles of Bam, because Bam's a really good body puncher, and the way he punches to the body is when he slips shots and punches to the body. You really got to counter that. You can't really let Bam get his licks in.
You also can't let it have you with your hands in your pocket because he does it while you're punching, and I think it deters guys from letting their hands go.
Curious to see if Martinez actually, now that you think about it, because the last guy that fought Bam kind of went backwards against him and had a little bit of success early. I'm curious if we see different styles from Puma in this fight, because he's very versatile, like you said, and I forgot about that. Do you think there's a chance we see different elements in this to try to throw Bam off?
I'm not sure, but I think he's the most able to make an adjustment. Like, he has the skill set of anybody that Bam has had to fight outside of Estrada to fight in multiple styles.
How close of a fight is this?
I think it's close, bro. I mean, I definitely lean towards Bam. I think Bam is a generational talent, but I think this could be a 7-5, 8-4 kind of fight that only, builds Martinez's legacy too. Because I think he's one of the more underrated guys in the game right now.
Are people sleeping on this fight because these guys are just like boxers who don't talk trash and aren't really great hangs on social media?
Bro, all I gotta fucking hear about this week is Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua. Like, you can't tell, you know what I mean? Like, of course this is a slept on fight.
Yeah, it's a one. We got Will in the chat. X sent me here. Awesome. We're glad that the social media platform X got you here. We hope you're enjoying the show.
And we are not men who get a lot of algorithmic love,
So be sure to tell your friends so our voices can be heard and we can be more famous and people go, wow, that's so cool. You have a show. New here. What are we talking about? We are talking about this weekend's pay-per-view card. We're breaking down the action, and now we're getting to the next fight on the card, which is Abdullah Mason, Sam Noakes, WBO vacant lightweight title fight. Dakota, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm going to have to defer to you a little bit on this one because as much as I've seen Noakes once or twice, I don't feel confident that I really understand his level. I like what I've liked when I've seen him. I think he is very talented, but I'd have to defer to you as to whether or not he could actually.
He's a real guy. He's a real guy. He can punch. He's physically strong, and he's pretty smart. I think this is closer to a 50-50 fight than people think. Typically in fights like this, generational talents like Abdullah Mason, who seems like a really special guy, win them. But Sam Noakes is a real guy, and he's a very formidable fighter. And this is going to be a fight where Abdullah sometimes, right, and we applaud him for this, he gets excited to punch and be offensive. And this is going to be a great championship fight, and in my opinion, championship victory for Abdullah, where he has to show a little bit of restraint and not punch too much because Noakes is a real puncher. This is a one-punch guy that he's in with.
I'm just so confident that he can do it, Lukey, because he's just been so poised at every turn of his career, being a 19, 20-year-old guy fighting on television, even in moments, where fights weren't necessarily going his way when he got dropped. He's had a composure and an ability to rise to and handle the moment in a way that most guys his age just can't.
He became a superstar strictly on performances. He became a superstar in the sport of boxing because of good performances. And this fight, to me, reminds me of 2021 when he fought in the USA Boxing Nationals against Joel Iriarte. Iriarte, now a top Golden Boy prospect who's much bigger than him. He was a good pressure fighter, and I'm like, ooh, this is a good one. I was going to favor Iriarte. And Abdullah boxed him so well. I think you're going to see a different Abdullah Mason in this fight. He's going to box well. He's going to be very sharp. And I think this is going to be a championship performance where he understands this guy is very good, can punch. And I think he's going to probably not get the credit he deserves because he makes it look a little easier than he should because he's in there with such a good fighter. That's
sure,
my
and he's in with a British guy, right? And so people in the States that may not know who he is as much or at all, right? Like as much as me or less, it'll be easy to go like, who do you really, when they're not understanding that he's the other top rated guy in the sanctioning body, that there's a reason that he got there. And I would encourage anybody who hasn't seen Noakes to go back and watch a little of it. It's tough to know sometimes with some of the opponents, but there's a lot of eye test stuff that he passes.
He's a real puncher, man. That's what I'll tell everybody. He's a real puncher, and you can't fake being a real puncher.
If there's anything, he's been caught up over that front foot a couple of times, right? So,
but I don't think it would. I just don't think he's going to give it to him because this is a real puncher. Now, there is a UFC fight card pass with Mizuki Hiruta making a title defense November 22nd. Some interesting undercard fights. Right hook Roxy, Guadalupe Medina versus Tatiana Almaraz. But this is basically the fight week this week. This is it. This fight is our fight week this week. So, Dakota, how are you feeling? And Will is here. Me as a former amateur boxer coming up from Baltimore with David Sewell as my coach and coming up with Emmanuel Taylor. In my opinion, I like both fighters, but I learn more. I lean more to Mason. Dude is a beast. And shout out to my guy, Manny Taylor. I want to tell you, Will, a story about Emmanuel Taylor. He fought my guy, Kareem Mayfield, back in the day, right? And Manny Taylor beat him. And then I went with Tino Avila, mutual friend of me and Dakota, and he fought Jojo Diaz. Fight didn't go our way. And I remember Emmanuel Taylor was the nicest guy, and he's fighting this guy, Lucas Matisse. And I was like, Manny Taylor's going to give him a tough fight because Manny Taylor had given Broner a tough fight at the time, if I remember. And he gets in there with Matisse. And then that's like when you learn certain guys are punchers. Taylor was fighting a great fight, and he just got hit once by Matisse. And I think it was over. Like it was, I don't know if it was a one-punch knockout, but it was like one of those where you just find out there's certain guys that walk this earth that just hit a tiny bit harder. And one mistake is just deadly against certain fighters. So, yeah, Will, it's great to have you in this chat. And we really hope that you stay with us and that you listen to more of our content or whatever, because we really like really smart, passionate boxing people who nerd out about this. That's our group, man.
So funny, Lukey. You know me. I've never had a Twitter or an X account, so I'm always surprised when people find us from this site that I've like never been on.
He's never been on the site. In fact, people have strong opinions about Dakota on X. People have like made posts about Dakota, and there's nothing for them to tag. Like he's just getting opinionated for being on a talk show. It's quite amazing. Mason is trained very well.
I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that was
great.
happening.
Mason is trained very well. Noakes is not to be slept on, but this is Mason's test, but I believe he will pull it off. But it's hard to say because his chin is sketchy, in my opinion. Been dropped before. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like Noakes is like, he doesn't have the athleticism, and he's a little bit like slow in terms of his feet, but he's really friggin' fundamentally sound. Like people are really underestimating the fact that like part of why he's such a strong puncher is his feet move with his hands, and he sets his feet, he turns his hips, he lands good shots. It's gonna be a fight. I don't think Abdullah's gonna give him those 50-50 chances. I think that Vasquez fight.
Who is the British kid that Shakur fought? that came in last minute. You remember what was that guy's name?
Give me a second.
Padley, right? Josh Padley.
Oh yeah, Josh Padley. Yeah.
Is there a chance this fight looks like that, where it's like the guy's super game and he's in it, and you could tell he wants to win it, but it's just different levels?
It's different because I don't think of Padley as a puncher. Padley's a volume boxer who overwhelms people with spirit. Noakes is a puncher. He's a physical fighter. And I don't see him in any way resembling this. I mean, he's 17-0 with 15 knockouts, bro. And he's fighting guys, bro. He's fighting real guys. No. And let's look at his amateur career. Yeah, 6-1 this is a real guy, bro. This is a real guy who really can punch. He's going like Noakes is a guy who's going to come forward. He's going to press. He's going to make Abdullah try to exert a lot of energy. He might lose a couple of rounds. He's going to look for the hand speed. He's going to start out like this. He's going to feint a little bit, but he wants to read him. I think it's going to look, if it goes Noakes' way, it's going to look like Ashton Silva versus Lucas Body, where you've got a veteran. Sure. Noakes is the type of guy who's going to try to win this in the second half of the fight, and he can punch. So I think that this is going to be one where I'm going to be curious how that second half of the fight is, because I think Abdullah should build a good lead. I think Abdullah probably is just going to fight a patient fight that a lot of people might call boring or slow. But Noakes is formidable, man.
I would love to see him fight a slow fight. He's been very aggressive early in his career, which has been very impressive. But I would love to see him switch into that gear and get a little bit on the back foot and get a little more thoughtful. I would like to see that.
Well, I'm right there with you. You said Noakes, the slept-on fighter. Mason have a lot more fan base. But if we're talking boxing, I believe this is a test from. I mean, look, I was watching those Queensberry cards where Joe Joyce, Joe Parker fought, speaking of which, and Noakes was impressing me on that undercard because of the way he was patient. He's a puncher. He's physical. But he does a lot of, if Noakes was a U.S.-based fighter, there would be a lot of excitement around him. Part of the thing for the U.S. fan base is they haven't seen him because he's been on these undercards, but he is a number one contender for a reason. He is a top guy, and this is a real fight. This is like a legit championship level fight.
No, I agree. I remember the fight with Mendy. I really thought he was tremendous, and Mendy's had kind of a proven track record of being like a long time contender, right? So that's a good sort of bar to use for where he's at.
Yeah, I mean, that's that. Chat, do you have any more questions, or are we going to call it a night? Because that's our fight week preview. Maybe we'll do a post-fight show after the fights, because the fight cards are going to end kind of quick on Saturday, and we'll probably be able to do it. So what's your guys' take on Brian versus Devin? We already kind of got into this earlier.
We went deep, Will. We went deep,
but if you have a specific question, Will, we can give you like a one-off question answer, because we're loving that you're in the chat. We're loving what you bring. Just maybe throw us one question, because we kind of broke that down already. I'll give you the timestamp right now.
Once we get done here, go back.
37:50 is the timestamp, but maybe throw us one question about that fight, because there's different ways to go. But if you have a specific question about that fight, I'd love to answer. Dakota, while we're maybe waiting for a good buddy, who you guys got winning? Let's go a little deeper than that. Dakota's got Norman winning. I've got it 50-50, but maybe ask a question based on how we see the fight going in terms a keys to victory, an X factor no one's talking about, maybe one of those, because we've already done a full segment. Let's go deeper if you have a deeper question. But Dakota, where are you going to be this week, and where can people find you?
You can always catch me here on the Lukey Boxing Show. You can always catch me on ITR Boxing. You can always catch me on the Slip and Weave podcast. Go check out the Fight Life with Mio Yoshida, and we'll see you next week. And appreciate Underrated Will and everybody else in the chat.
And I'm seeing if Underrated Will is going to fire one more, because we're trying to give Underrated Will a question, because we did the Norman segment. So I'll give him an extra 30 seconds to see if Will is going to be there. But we appreciate everybody. Super, super high viewed show. We're going to really try to give you a show right after the pay-per-view next week. And we're out, guys. So thank you for everything. Take care.